It's been 20 years since I started doing this, and I still struggle to answer the question, what are we doing and why? And I notice, depending on my mood, it changes the answer to that question. It's multidimensional. Has anyone done like an Aya ceremony, like plant medicine? Okay, for those of you who've done that, you'll know what I'm talking about. We're basically going to go on an Aya journey without medicine, but each other is the medicine. That sounds cryptic, so let me explain. I'll share this first level like this. There is the way you're showing up in life, and then there is the deepest, freest, most authentic expression of who you really are. And often those two don't match. And often the inner potential of who you are isn't known to us yet. There is a blueprint that exists inside that is our true self. And then there is the masks that we wear, our persona that we project, the shadows that we hide, that distort that blueprint and that essence. And so the way we are is a version of us, but isn't in fact always the full, connected, balanced, integrated, alive version. It's a distortion often. So it's like we are born into a certain shape, and then through life we get contorted into another shape through parents, conditioning, school, religion, culture. And then we live through our life in this contorted, distorted shape. And that distortion takes a lot of energy to hold. So we get tired, sick, unhappy, stressed, because it takes a lot to hold a shape that is not us. So the word that comes to mind for today, at least this weekend, is the purpose of our time together is shared liberation. And that is, what if we could together as a tribe support each other to liberate into new flavors, new parts within our being, and to be able to go back into life and integrate those new parts in a new way and become more whole, more authentic to this true self. And the best way to describe that is through the lens and the frame of shadow. In essence, hard IQ is shadow work. But in order to understand what that is, we need to have a collective shared reality of that word shadow, because there's a lot of that talked about in the world. When I speak about shadow, I'm speaking about what wasn't and what isn't allowed. What wasn't and what isn't allowed. So, for example, some people might hold shadow as the stuff we don't see. Our blind spot is behind us. I think that most people do actually see a lot of their shadow. They just hide it. They keep it hidden and cover it with distraction, shame, busyness, work, all the other stuff of life through their masks that they wear and present to the world. But this idea of feeling in to what wasn't allowed is a really helpful question. For example, it wasn't allowed to be angry. It wasn't allowed to have needs. It wasn't allowed to say no and to have boundaries. It wasn't allowed to go out and play freely. It wasn't allowed to sleep in and take my time and actually rest. Do any of these relate? So what wasn't allowed? Just one thing.
I wasn't allowed to be emotional in life, to show my emotions.
I wasn't really allowed to show intense feelings. It wasn't allowed to be magical.
I wasn't allowed to take free choices.
I wasn't allowed to have a temper tantrum.
I wasn't allowed to take up a lot of space and play big.
I wasn't allowed to do nothing.
I wasn't allowed to be proud of myself.
I wasn't allowed to be weak.
I wasn't allowed to be different.
Now accelerate that to the present moment. And it may be similar, but what isn't being allowed right now in your life lived today? Or what are you not allowing? And it's not so much behaviors, like I'm not allowed to drive on the left side of the road. We're not talking about that. We're talking about actual emotional, energetic qualities here. Just as a little tweak of the ownership piece is, I would recommend bringing it through I'm not allowing myself to speak authentically to others.
I don't allow myself to follow my true impulse. I always hold back.
I don't allow my heart to open fully.
I'm not allowing myself to shine really brightly.
I'm not allowing myself to speak my critique.
I'm not allowing myself to lose control.
I'm not allowing myself to run around naked.
And not care about other people's opinions.
I'm not allowing myself to show the way I want to live, like with all the spirituality and open up for everything.
I'm not allowing myself to not accept things.
I'm not allowing myself to shout out my anger.
So we've got some examples. Each of us probably have a flavor of everything that's being shared to a degree. So here's the thing. The reason we don't allow these parts, to make it sound simplistic, is our body, mind, nervous system doesn't feel safe to express and be in those parts. The reason that it's not safe is because it's been programmed from very, very young that to express some aspects of you leads to connection and having your needs met, and expressing other parts of you led to rejection and not having your needs met. So very early on, as you grew up with your parents and your caregivers, you began to see very clearly certain behaviors leads to connection and having your need for closeness and connection met, and others leads to separation. And you avoid connecting to parts of you that lead to separation. So if you were to look back, you would begin to understand, oh, okay, behind all of this is a need to connect. And therefore, as we do this work, the most profound glue or the most profound impact or result is this connection that we start to feel with ourselves and each other and with tribe. But here's the piece around how we move with this work. You get an opportunity, if you want, this weekend to bring what wasn't allowed into connection and experience it, and to be witnessed and to be allowed what wasn't allowed. In other words, you get to practice showing what you've hidden, revealing what was previously exiled, and to show us as your tribe what's actually behind the mask. But in order to do that, you will need to feel safe, because neither of us nor any of we are here to push you, confront you, tell you what to do, what you should do. This is not a practice with an agenda, a curriculum, a shadow sequence. Today we're going to do anger, and then we're going to do this, and everyone has to push through this piece. There's none of that. It's emergent based on when your body feels ready and safe to take a step. So a big part of this weekend is bringing your body and nervous system into a state of relaxation and safety. And another word for that is regulated, regulation. This sense of your nervous system goes from fight, flight, freeze, or fawn into rest, connection, presence, openness. Because when you are regulated, open, present, and connected, you will naturally want and are ready for stretching back into your full self without force, without coercion, manipulation, or push. So no one here needs to push themselves open. You relax and melt and surrender yourself open. And so we have an opportunity here to meet one another, support one another, and bring ourselves more whole. Now, what you'll find is when you liberate by revealing and being witnessed in these parts that haven't been allowed, is that you'll realize there's a lot of life force connected, trapped, and bound into your body around these repressed or exiled parts. That is, over the years, the amount of energy it takes to keep that part locked down is immense. And when you liberate it, it will be like a surge of life force that comes through your being. Even if you're feeling anger, jealousy, grief, it will be potentially ecstatic. And you might be like, what? Why would my pain be pleasurable? And it is possible to feel good, feeling bad, when you liberate what has been holding that pain back. And as you bring that through, and we are witnessed in it, it's kind of like going to church together in a non-religious sense. It's like heaven's open and we feel a magic and a sense of interconnectivity that is beyond words, a togetherness that just feels like, oh, this is what normal feels like. This is what unity consciousness is. And now we tap into what is often called the transpersonal field. So we've got the personal work, which is what isn't allowed? What can I take space for on the mat to kind of open and connect to and be felt in and liberate? And as we do that together, we realize there's only one of us in the room. In other words, you or me cleverly camouflaged as you. And there's only one of us here playing in this beautiful kaleidoscope and fractal. It looks so convincing that you're over there and I'm over here and that we have separate lives and separate relationships and separate thoughts, but it's all one. And when that happens, there is an awakening that is taking place, which is almost impossible to forget. You walk in life with the remembrance that every life whose life you touch is you cleverly camouflaged as them. No exception. Even the evil, even the disconnected, even the people that you hate and are disgusted by, you can't now walk down the road and not realize that you are looking at a part of yourself. Everything is you cleverly camouflaged as them. And what you think isn't is your shadow work to do. And that's where spiritual freedom comes, is when we realize it's all me. Everything in life, all of it is a reflection. The war, the genocide, the rape, the pillage, everything is reflecting of the humanity that lives inside all of us. And that's where the shadow work expands to collective shadow work. So this is the ride you've signed up for. I didn't know if you knew that. It doesn't really say that on the website, because if it did, you probably wouldn't have signed up. I used a few terms there. I want to make sure. Does everybody know what I mean by fight, flee, freeze, and fawn? Fawn is when you pretend to be a yes when you're a no, for example. It's like smiling when in fact you're inside not smiling, in order to stay safe or to get a sense of agreeableness. So you remain connected with somebody and remove the level of conflict. So instead of showing your true feelings, your true no, you're fawning, you're pretending to show up and be okay when you're actually not. Whereas a freeze is, it's when you have the foot on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time and you can't quite move. So that's a freeze. And a lot of us are frozen in parts and ranges. So our internal relationship with anger is often frozen. We are angry, but we were told anger isn't okay. So we are pushing and then pulling back at the same time. So anger lives as a freeze often. And we don't feel the freeze, we go numb. So we get a bit dissociated and we don't know how to be with that. So these are nervous system states that you might find yourself in as you take space, as you witness other people taking space. That's just natural and normal. Let's take a breath.